Welcome to the Payments Trilogue, where 3 seasoned professionals discuss payments and more, for Europe and beyond.
Hello, my name is Michael Salmony, and as you can see and hear, we are doing the Christmas episode of the Trilogue this time. I am joined, as always, by Ralf, you can see with the Father Christmas hat on, and Gijs, who looks a bit more like a lumberjack, but we'll take what we can get. So what we thought we would do for the Christmas episode is do some wish lists. Ralf would say a few things what he would wish from banks and the regulator from the fintech point of view, and Gijs similarly from the bank perspective. But before we go in there, I just want to thank everybody who's watching this trilogue. It seems it's really catching on. Although we've only done about 6 episodes, I'm getting thousands of views when I repost, for example, the last CBDC episode, and 800 downloads of the paper I wrote about it. So thanks for all the lovely comments I'm getting personally and that we're all seeing in the statistics. Okay, so before we now let's get into the dialogue, and maybe Ralf, you can kick us off with a few things on your wish list.
Okay, yeah. Well, I have actually a long list. It almost feels like back into childhood because, as you know, as I grow older, my Santa list got shorter and shorter. And actually, these days, I'm not sure I have any. So different for my kids, they have long lists. And so today here with talking about my regulatory or bank wish list, I'm feeling back into that more childish, hopeful, wishful, optimistic way of approaching this. So I would like to start with the most imminent regulation coming in, which is instant payments. So here, I guess the wish is not so much more on the regulators because the job is, or the co-legislators, because that is done. The legislation is coming in. So here, my main wish is really to the banks, and it's a very important one. So you may know that the instant payments are supposed to be or cannot be more expensive than non-instant payments. So that's a part of the regulation. But we have just seen some banks in Spain, or at least one bank in Spain, increasing non-instant fees. And I guess it's exactly what we were afraid of, that maybe some banks will try to avoid zero fees for instant payments by now starting to charge for the non-instant. And that, I think, would be a very, very unfortunate development. And of course, actually twofold, because, from a PISP's perspective, when you do payments via PIS, it basically lives from the fact that non-instant SET payments are typically free of charge to the consumer, so they don't have to pay anything for making the payment itself. And if that changes, then we have a problem for non-instant payments. And of course, we would have then the same problem for instant payments going forward, that people wouldn't use it. They would not use a payment method where you're going to pay for the payment itself, because you will have free alternatives, cards, etc. So that, for me, is one of the biggest wishes for next year. And we have another wish or hope that with the first deadline coming in January, where we have the receiving of instant payments becoming mandatory, and in October then the sending. From our perspective, we really need the sending. So therefore, hopefully some banks will do both in one go, and we'll get the sending right away in January and don't have to wait another 9 months to October for having the sending enabled as well. And the last one is on this verification of payee, where I think we do have some common interest with many banks that most TPPs, I think, do not really want to get pulled into that whole thing and overhead and doing all these verification of payee. And thankfully, the Berlin Group has implemented their flag in their standards, VOP standards, where the TPP could say, bank, please do the VOP, or don't do it because it's unnecessary, because we can use this exemption where the PISP has already, KYC'd the merchant and there is no need for a transactional VOP anyway. So for me, instant payments, that's my 3 wishes on that one.
Okay, wonderful. So, Gijs, do you want to react to that and maybe add some of your own?
Well, no, I'm not going to react. I have my own wishes. So Ralf is entitled to his wishes and is allowed to keep on dreaming, of course.
That's also a reaction.
So, but and it's staying at the topic of instant payment. So that's probably good. I think, well, indeed, verification of PE was also on my list. Hopefully, we get a smooth implementation of the varying VOP initiatives. That they all will indeed become interoperable, that they all will use the VOP scheme, the overlay scheme of the European Payments Council. We have high hopes on that one. And hopefully it will help, because that's the whole idea behind it. It will help fight fraud, or at least mistakes and erroneous payments. So it's going to be a tough nut to crack across Europe. I believe we have a lot of experience already since 2017 in the Netherlands. It is not an easy thing to do. But there are lessons learned, and I really wish that it's going to be implemented well. Apart from these exemptions that Ralf is mentioning, that's small beer, but that in general it delivers on the promise it holds to make payments more secure and more safe. One more technical thing in instant payments is that the timeline of 10 seconds, according to the EPC rulebook, may still be a little thing we have to look better at to make the instant payments really, really compatible in terms of transaction speed for a good point of sale, especially in the physical retail point of sale, alternative means to cards. Be it QR code, barcode, or NFC based, whatever based initiation, there might still be some work to be done to really get the transaction speed we need to compete with the card-based solutions that are out there today. So that would be my 2 wishes for instant payments, the most important ones.
Okay, excellent. Thanks very much. We already did some episodes both on instant and on fraud, so I won't comment any more on that. I think we already said something about that. I do also have some wish lists for you two, both of you, and also for the regulator. Just to bring one for you two, my wish list is that you would work together more. I think the enemy is not the enemy of the fintech is not the bank. The enemy of the bank is not the fintech. You can both win if you work together, because the enemy is actually elsewhere, if one can say an enemy. But we need to ensure sovereignty, and we need to make sure that we serve the clients, both consumers and corporates, better. And that's only going to work if banks work together and banks and fintechs work together. So that would be my first wish, and I will come up with other wishes towards the regulator later in the episode. But Ralf, you said you had a longer list. So what are your next things?
Yeah. So from now looking at the still outstanding new regulations, of course, top of our mind on a TPP side, fintech side, I guess, is PSR or PSD3, but PSR in particular. And we had an episode, so I will not spend too much time on it, where I explained it in more detail. But I think for me, number one is really that we should get away from this, strange idea of providing a dedicated interface. So yes, we want APIs, we want machine-to-machine automated interfaces, but it should certainly not be dedicated to one party, to TPPs. The more parties are using an interface, the better. And we have already quite some examples, again with the Berlin Group, where many of the APIs are to be used both by TPPs and by corporates. So all these extended services are all to be used, or mainly actually designed for corporate access, corporate direct access. And these are the APIs we want to use. So it's not of an advantage to the bank if they have to maintain a dedicated, special, separate interface for TPPs, and it's better for the TPPs as well if we don't have an exclusive one to us, because this exclusivity doesn't come with advantages, really only disadvantages, and leading to the second point that we need better contingency for all those APIs that do not work well, and it is still unfortunately the majority, as I explained in our last episode on that. One other thing also very important is that, and I don't know how to achieve it, but I want to please, Santa, help me in making people understand that a PIS service is typically, in most cases, not a service to the payer. It is a service to the payee, to the merchant. We're paid by the merchant for helping them. It's a one payment method, like cards, like whatever, all the other Ideal, EPI, etc. So it's a payment method that is the merchant is paying for. And it's therefore typically most PISPs are so-called merchant-sided PISPs or payee PISPs and have no relationship, no contract, or no nothing with the payer, and therefore, so that hopefully the council will understand that their ideas, which are opposite, are actually not the reality of the market. Anyway, and the other thing I think it is important to want to mention it again, that I think in terms of governance, because we have identified that many of the problems that we've had were down to governance, focusing maybe on security, and basically very little on competition, and basically nothing on innovation. So having competition authorities involved would be also on my wish list. And I have 20 more just on PSR. I will not mention them again.
You were super clear on what you said there. That's great. Gijs, what do you think?
Yeah, I concur with Ralf. Wouldn't it be nice if we could unpack one little present and it would be a nice and shiny uniform API inside of it that everybody can use? But we're a long way from that yet. But we're making progress. It's a long way, but eventually we'll get there. So I fully concur with you, Ralf. That this needs to be taken care of, but it will take time, unfortunately. One other totally different thing on my PSR wish list is two things. One is the ongoing discussions on what we call the subjective definition of authorization, meaning in the context of authorized push payment fraud, where a customer is defrauded by somebody telling, I'm from the bank, your money is at risk, please transfer your money to account XYZ, and of course that's the criminal's account, and that's why and the customer actually authorizes the payment, him or herself. So far, that was legally binding. You did it yourself. There are leniency frameworks for that, but now in the discussions, we are going a little bit over the Parliament is a little bit overdoing it by saying, well, authorization. If I'm defrauded and I did authorize the payment, but in hindsight I didn't want to make the payment, then it should become unauthorized and the bank should refund the customer. That is a very fundamental flaw in thinking, we believe, because that would, and that's also in the interest of the PIS piece, would basically go to the payment security in general, because anyone could contend, oh, I made the payment. Yes, I did it. I don't deny that. I authorized it initially, but in hindsight, I didn't want to do it. So I want my money back. That is a very dangerous development, we believe, in PSR going on. We know in the council working groups, but this is absolutely fundamental that should not happen. Of course, consumer protection is one thing, but payment security and payment certainty is another. And this is absolutely the wrong balance here. Very dangerous. A little bit attached to that, I think we need more room for data exchange to fight criminals. This is the tension between GDPR and what we need in data, in terms of data, to effectively fight crime. GDPR is not out there to protect criminals, but unfortunately, it makes it extremely difficult to effectively exchange data between financial institutions, be it banks and or PISPs in the ecosystem, to lay bare patterns that individual institutions cannot see. You cannot warn each other, hey guys, this is a criminal. And of course, we need to better address that. We are too naive. I'm not saying it's not a fundamental right on privacy, but here a better balance has to be struck, because the only ones profiting now are the criminals, and we can't let that happen.
Very good, Gijs. You both made very, very punchy points. That's great. For my first points versus the regulator, I'm going to say something not very original, but I will come up with two more things which I think may be a bit new. The not original one is more principle-based regulations and not so much in the details. We've seen, for example, in the SCA and various other things that they are just far too detailed, where the market doesn't have a chance to move. And the second one is evidence-based regulation. Only when there's a real market failure or when there's a real evidence need, and where that instrument that is being proposed by the regulator, that actually remedies the problem. And when we talk about CBDCs and various other things, I think we can see some issues there. So principle-based regulation and evidence-based regulation would be my wish list. But Ralf, you haven't finished. Carry on then.
Yeah, and I have some general points which I want to leave myself to the end, so I'll come back on that one actually. But we're sticking with payments for the moment. So what springs to mind next is SPAA, our SEPA Payment Account Access Scheme that we have launched last year. We're trying to pilot, so dear Santa, please make some banks join it. And I think we have bent over backwards, at least from our perspective, that we are basically reduced any obstacle, minimal product, there is actually any bank could join today without having, or at least a pilot, without having to develop anything, because I'm sure they have already implemented, they have already functionality which goes beyond the basic regulation, which they could start selling there without much new investment. Yeah, I mean, there is of course also the Burning Group version 2 coming in that most banks, I guess, will also implement, and that will give another push in the same direction, where there will be functionality then available that might not be mandated but could be monetized here in SPAA. So please give it a try.
Yeah, I'm fully with you, Ralf. There's the same present, but a different formulation of that. What my wish would be is awareness at C level at the asset holders, i.e. the banks, of the strategic importance of SPAA with a framework, multi-stakeholder developed framework with a compensation model inside of it, which sets the example for the open finance frameworks beyond payments. That's why we developed it, and unfortunately, we have to keep repeating why we did it and what it holds in terms of promise to make people aware. And another wish would be, because I do believe you mentioned the open finance framework of the Berlin Group. One of the things that is hindering a quick adoption is the PSR process, because banks will only jump to the open finance framework once the PSR is there, once there's legal clarity what that means from a compliance perspective. So they have still, unfortunately, a wait and see attitude, because PSR is not yet there, and they will only probably big time transfer also to SPAA, because then you kill two birds with one stone. If you have to do PSR anyway, you can just as well do SPAA, because that's a trivial extra effort. So unfortunately, the legislative process of PSR is not helping SPAA. There is a connection there because of the standardization of in the Berlin Group specs, which is of course on the backlogs, and banks will have to be compatible and compliant with the PSR once it gets there, and have to transfer to the open finance framework of PSD2. But they can still wait, or they will still wait until there is legal certainty, i.e. PSR enacted. So I would also hope, and the signs are not very positive as we read the developments in Brussels with the coming presidencies. I have no high hopes there, so not sure how we have to cope with that, Ralf, with regard to SPAA. But well, I do believe there's a strong dependency. The quicker PSR is enacted, the more banks will join SPAA, because they will have to make the little investment from PSD2 to PSR compliance. And we've made a study, we've shared it with the SPAA multi-stakeholder group. You know that, Ralf. If you have to jump from A to B, you could just as well do C, i.e. become a SPAA member. So, and C level must, sorry, also understand the strategic importance. It seems a little thing, a trivial thing. It doesn't require hundreds of millions of investments, as you just said, Ralf, and that is one of uh, the collateral damage. It is so small, it is so obvious that people are overlooking it.
Yeah, very good. I mean, obviously, completely agree with what you're both saying. SPA is at last a framework where everybody has fun, right? Everybody gets compensated, and it's on agreed levels which are tolerable or attractive for both sides. It's been arranged by both sides. So it'd be really sad if that weren't now being adopted from all sides.
Absolutely.
But let me, on that note, make my one first wish to the regulator, which is maybe a bit controversial, and that's on industrial policy. We see industrial policy in other areas like agriculture, where the state has some steer and makes sure that not everybody breeds pigs, but we have some pigs and wheat and barley and grain and chickens. So there's some steer from the state to make sure that subsidies are put in the right place and that we cover the market in an appropriate way. Now, in payments, I don't think we have that. We have a sort of high-level retail payment strategy, which is full of lovely good stuff about transparency and fairness and equality and everything. And we have some super detailed regulations on at the bottom level. But there's not much steer. And that means that, for example, the industry is now creating EPI and EuroPA and SPA and EMSA and 15 other things. And we're all breeding chickens. We're all trying to solve the same problem instead of getting some steer and maybe also some subsidies from the state to make this sovereignty happen. It's a controversial topic, I know, but I would just want to put it out there that maybe we need to think about an industrial policy for payments. But back to you two, Ralf.
Yeah, well, no, okay. Could I react to that? Because yeah, it is a bit controversial, I would say, but because I know, and we had these discussions now in various for the last few weeks and months on various conferences. Also, for example, at the Commission's expert group on payments, about do we have too much of it now here in Europe and trying to make European payments great again in too many ways, and rather than focusing on one way. I just don't think it is possible. So I think we'll cover it or have covered it already, the various types of account-to-account payments and etc. But I think the main thing here is that from a regulatory perspective, I wouldn't see that they should steer it in this direction or that direction. If anything, there was already too much steering in the direction of EPI in particular, from my point of view, because of course we will be in competition. You can't combine this like the EPI approach and the PISP approach. It's a different way of doing it, and I would argue probably similar with EMSA and others. So there is, I think there must be competition. The role of the regulator is to make sure there is a level playing field. That really, really is the important thing. And honestly, I don't think we are there yet. So I want a more level playing field, and then those with a better offer will win or will get a higher share. And I wouldn't mind if in the future we'll have 20% market share for different European players rather than all in one pot.
Yeah, I think I'm a bit in the middle, because when you were saying that the level playing field, a graveyard is also a level field, right? So while I'm intellectually, of course, fully concurring, but I have come to the conclusion that unless we have some more strict, and you were there at our own conference, Ralf, at the 7th of November, where also the Commission was present, I would like to have a little bit more steer. Also, I find it funny, how can it be that in the eIDAS Another Directorate General, DG Connect, is co-funding large-scale pilots, whereas in payments we don't have that. How can that be? Guys, give us a couple of billion to tinker with and come with good solutions. And I could well see, Ralf, that you would have two large-scale pilots in payments. One for the open banking part, the PISP-led thing. The other one, the more EPI-like stuff. Anything is possible in a sensible way, but I have come to the conclusion without more steering, I think that there are more on the side of Michael. We're not going to make it if we have geopolitical ambitions. We can also stop having those ambitions, all well and fine, and say, let's live on the level playing field and let others play on that field too. Fine with me. I mean, it all depends on what is the problem we're trying to solve here.
Okay, it
Yeah.
looks like I've stuck my hand in a bit of a wasp's nest here. Sorry, I didn't want to disrupt but I do think there's a role of the state as a convener, to bring people together and say, look, this is ridiculous. We're doing 7 parallel things. Can we do that? And subsidies, obviously not the banks. They already have enough money, but they could subsidize merchants or schemes, or they could do something.
Exactly.
But this brings me very nicely actually to the digital euro. Of and how we've already discussed and shown that I think we more or less agreed that we would prefer it not to compete so much with existing private solutions, and staying out of this game here and sticking to where public money, ECB money, is and has been sitting in the past, not in the form of notes and coins, but in the form of digital tokens. So yes, digitize it by all means, but keep it in that spirit of having it like a token in a wallet, which is handed over from one person to the other, or from me to the merchant in a shop. Peer-to-peer settlement, not account-based, not third-party settlement, not going behind rails on the backside and all of that. So I think we've discussed it before, but therefore let me just bring another topic up quickly in here, which we will discuss in the future, the European Identity Wallet. And so my wish for that is that we can use the synergy here with the digital euro, so that the digital euro wallet and the identity wallet could be combined, or could be both, or the identity wallet could contain digital euros. And in particular, so that this would be, I think it's an absolutely unique, a coincidence, but it's a unique opportunity to have the introduction of the identity wallet here coincide with actually having the ability of having digital euro tokens in that wallet and use it there. So that's one. And otherwise, on the identity wallet, of course, we hope that this will provide a real alternative to SEA flows where they are not so good. And there are many of them which are not so good. And here, hopefully, we'll have an alternative with a biometrics, easy identify, authenticate a payment thing. And so we hope that will work out.
Excellent. Gijs?
Yeah, well, on the digital euro first, my real wish would be, and again, it ties a little bit into what we just said about steering. It should be a true public-private partnership. I also talked to Eurocommerce about that. We have to do it together, and it still is not a real public-private partnership. The whole digital euro project, it is seen as that and felt as that by the ECB. They are communicating and reaching out a lot, but somehow we are not really in it together as guys. This is how we're going to do it. This is what the compensation model looks like. This is how it fits. Concurring also with Ralf, how it fits in the ecosystem. What is the problem we're solving with this thing from a payments perspective? That is monetary anchor stuff. That's beyond me. But in the payments ecosystem, where should it fit? There, I fully concur with Ralf. Creating a lot of confusion, and it's very frustrating. Much of the intellectual oxygen is sucked out of the payments ecosystem and goes into probably useless discussions and fighting each other in the digital euro context. That's very frustrating, because we could turn it for the good of Europe, but then something has to change in the steering of it and the real partnership with the need that there's something in it for everybody, including a compensation model for those for banks. Of course, not a subsidy, but a cost recovery model. That is on the eIDAS. Everything, of course, it has an up and a down and a downside. It should be part of the bigger plan. But what we see happening now with the large-scale pilots, the consortia being formed, and the old consortia, the old 4 and the new 2 that are being formed, we also see that from a geopolitical perspective, there are some funny participants in those LSPs, large-scale pilots. We may not fit in the geopolitical intentions we have here. I'm not naming names here, but we do need to be very, very wary that we are not, that the eIDAS and the EUID wallet is not turning out to be some form of Trojan horse. And well, I'll stop there. But we have to really think strategically, and that's the problem with all these developments. We jump on the bandwagon because we're all excited at what could technically be done without first thinking through, same with the digital, where this will get us in the end, and who do we want to be on that train, and who we may not want to be there or jump on later. So we fail to have strategic thinking at the highest levels, and that comes back to your industrial policy thing a little bit, I think. For the banks, I think, and that's what we're doing right now, and I think our guest will also is also involved in that. What does that mean? What it really means? The problem here is that the eIDAS and the EUID will come from another Director General than DG FISMA, which we're usually talking to with regard to payments. It's more a telco-ish thing. DG Connect said, okay, strong user authentication is the same as strong customer authentication, which means that anywhere you'd have to do that, you have to accept the EUID wallet if the customer wants that. But then if we ask the question, but what exactly does it mean? If one Director General says, well, we don't know because we are not, we don't have the mandate to talk about payments. The directorate that has the mandate to talk about payments says, well, we can't say anything either because it's not our regulation. So we have to figure our way out to get an industry position on what we believe is the compliance part of it. And that's what we're trying to get our heads around, because banks need to be able, because the law is the law, to accept the EUID wallet. If member states, of course, will be in time with producing it, that's another matter. But banks need to be compliant by end 2027, which means you have to invest into 26 already budget to become compliant. And we're only starting to realize what it means. So for Ralf, it's easy. Oh, it would be ideal, it would be great if we could use it. But on the acceptance level, at the bank's level, we haven't figured out yet what it means to become compliant and what the cost of that would be. Maybe it's not going to be used at all because it's up to the customer to say, oh no, I want to use the SCA of my bank, or I want to use the EUID wallet. We really need to figure that one out quickly, because banks will have to start investing heavily for something that may not be used at all, or only in small volume. So this is going to be a compliance cost, Ralf, for the banks again, and it's on your wish list, but you're not going to pay for it.
Well, I think it will be used. So if the Nordics are any indication, so the bank ID and wherever we have an identity solution in the market today, like it's me in Belgium, etc. So it's really heavily used, and I think very well adopted. But well, I have one more bigger subject here. I don't know if I should go in maybe right away, which is of course FIDA, open finance, and what we're doing there. So we're we're having a separate episode on it, but in summary, for me, the main point is that FIDA should all be about enabling customers to get access to their data, full stop. So it should all be about allowing or basically forcing data holders to give not just like GDPR based within 30 days or so access to the customer data, but in this day and age, come to the 21st century, and allow 24/7 access, basically a user interface. And in the finance world, I mean, all the banks have it anyway. Many other for like for investments or securities, most have it as well. Some insurances have it already, not all of them, but I think the vast majority has it already. So it's not that much asked here for those who are not there yet to provide this this interface. And then if that is there, I think data holders would be well advised to make this interface or design it in a way that it can also be accessed automatically, i.e. an API-based interface, like they all have for their mobile applications. So
How do you organize it?
that
What's
already
the
is good enough. So an API-based interface, 24/7 accessible interface, that's it. And while we're on it there, and then leave, you know, the whole thing about schemes and how the stakeholders, what they should do, how they should do it, how much they could charge for it, etc. Leave that, please, to the market, like we've done with SPAA. We were not forced. We still can come together without regulation, without any over-regulation there, getting into basically telling us what to, how to do things. That really is the is not good. And well, there is the and also how that also answers the question on the scope of it, because of course it is the customer's data, so it's the customer who should then decide on which of their data they want to access or not, and whether it contains my pension or my health insurance or my life insurance or my whatever other insurance or my savings account, investment account, etc. It's my data. How dare the regulator, how do you dare telling me that, yes, I can have access to my car insurance, but not to my health insurance data? Why? It's me and my data. So I do not want such a regulation that limits the scope of customer data access in the financial world. So that really, I think, is one of the important points. And then here the council is coming up with suggestions in the latest draft. I think it's actually almost agreed now, where they are suggesting that as the data user, as it's called, like the TPP or the FISP in FIDA, would not be allowed to then use that data with any other company. So you cannot forward any of that data. So if, for example, I would the customer wants, if I as a customer I wanna have my give some my financial data to my accountant, like a corporate customer.
Ralf, I'm going to interrupt you. This is not a Christmas wish list thing anymore.
This is a wish list. This is a Christmas wish list to the council, and I think it really.
Be concrete. What is your wish list? What is your wish?
No, hang on. This is really important. So
I know.
Sticking to that example. So if I want to give my data to my accountant, now I cannot use a TVP who can then forward that to the accountant. The accountant has to become a TPP or a FIS themselves. This is stupid, really, and that has to go away. And by the way, I think it's not in line with PSR. It's not even not in line with GDPR. I really don't understand some of the stipulations coming up there. So please, Santa, let many of those bad ideas around FIDA go away.
Okay, I think I'm gradually going to call a halt to the wish list. Our time is gradually exceeding, and I think the listeners will see that.
I'm sorry. I have one more, because Ralf took so much time about his open data exchange. So I am entitled to one more wish. I'm sorry, and that is a totally different one. That is cash, the good old cold hard cash, the banknotes, and in the slipstream of the digital euro regulation, you have the legal tender regulation, mandatory acceptance of cash, basically without any exception. This is a dangerous thing. We believe cash, of course, remains important, but if this regulation it will not allow for, let's say, proportionality, and that will differ from jurisdictions, to make exemptions for the mandatory acceptance of cash. Let's say for public transport or parking or vending, all the non-attended stuff. It's still, we're trying to get our heads around. I mean, it would have crazy consequences if there would be no exceptions for any vending situation, you have to accept cash everywhere. So we would plead, that would be on my way, proportionality in the mandatory acceptance of cash.
Okay, Gijs, I know there's no attempt to ever discipline you, so thank you for adding that on as well. So you two have given super long wish lists. As I say, I was much more modest. I had one wish list for both of you. I voiced one wish list to the regulator, and as a final thing, since we're coming to the end of our time, would be just another, maybe slightly, I don't know, new but controversial wish for the regulator, and that is Leapfrog. I think we're looking so much at how to catch up with the Americans and with the Chinese, and then trying to do another Visa, MasterCard, another PayPal, another this, another that. And that's proved historically very, very difficult. If you look at the success of various initiatives, PayDirect, GiroPay in Germany, if you look at the attempts to try and oust cloud by European cloud, there's plenty of evidence in the market that it is incredibly difficult, that once others have got entrenched, to get rid of them. So I would just put out the idea there, how about thinking of Leapfrog? How about thinking of something new, which the Europeans are really good at, and we build something that the Americans have to catch up on? I have some ideas on that. We don't have time to explore that now, but I just want to put the idea out that maybe not always catch up and sovereignty and try and reproduce what others have already done, but to try and think of something new. And as I say, there are some ideas there, and maybe we'll explore that in another episode.
Yeah, leapfrogging to sovereignty. That's a good theme for one of our next episodes.
How about that? I think we've given quite a taster to the listeners on what we're going to be talking about on FIDA and on identity and maybe on Leapfrog. So I hope you will join us. So now thank you very much to our Father Christmases and our Lumberjacks for having joined us in this wish list episode. I hope you all enjoyed it. Please subscribe to our episode and look forward to seeing you next time.
Many thanks for watching and listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Looking forward to seeing you again next time.